Ladies and gentlemen, our next DevOps expert is a speaker and mentor and currently heads the security and data privacy divisions at a global leading software provider. She is a technical member at National Cyber Defense Research Center, that is NCDRC, and invests her time in mentoring women and young girls on cybersecurity and data privacy domains and encourages them to pursue careers in security domain. She is shortly coming to your screens to talk about security compliance by design and default. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of victory wave for Ms. Sailaja Vadlamudi.
Hello all, this is Sailaja Vadlamudi from Bangalore. I would like to welcome you all also from my side for the DevOps India Summit. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you today and welcome you all for my session. So today I'll be talking about security compliance by design and default. Let's walk through it quickly about the topic because I know all of us are really having a lot of trouble with all the laws coming in day in and day out across the geography, across the locations. Before getting into the topic, it's quickly about me. So I am working as a director for security and data privacy at SAP Labs based out of Bangalore. I also mentor students and professionals out of my passion, and I'm the founder for WIS. I'm also the SIA Global Ambassador, dreaming or aiming to impact 1 billion people across the globe on cyber hygiene. And I'm also on the advisory board. I'm also an active member at Cloud Security Alliance based out of Bangalore. And I am also a certified information security manager and certified data privacy solution engineer. So quickly going into the topic for today. So the agenda is, what is compliance all about? We all keep talking about compliance, and what is it all about in the first place? And why is that we have to talk about it now? Why is it becoming so important now during the pandemic? And is it really important, or is there a process in place so that we can also integrate compliance into design by default? And then after doing this, because we all know compliance is in whatever new requirements, new technicalities we have to do inside the system, it's always a lot of add-on with respect to the money or with respect to the headcounts or whatever it is. But I just want to tell you, it's also a business enabler. And not just that, let's also get into some use cases. Yeah, and I think this picture is very familiar to all of us in the current pandemic. Whenever we go to any of the public places, people are just checking our temperatures. And when we look into this aspect, not just from the Indian aspect, but also across the globe, there are some concerns that are raised by people. For example, I have heard an incident when someone went into the mall or walked into the mall, and there was a person from the mall. He just came and started checking the temperature, and the temperature of that particular person was a little bit higher, and then it started creating alarms around. And then people surrounded by that person started getting panicky. So what I'm trying to say is, whenever we come up with a new process, with a methodology, first of all, we have to ensure by design and by default, everything is taken care. For example, if you want to check the temperature, ideally, you have to check it when the people are entering the mall. Or, for example, you don't have to check temperature when they are in the middle of somebody. You can also call them aside, and then you can also just check the temperature. So this is just to set the tone of our today's talk on how we are going to integrate security compliance by design and by default. Now, coming to compliance, what is compliance all about? We have been hearing this term very aggressively during this time. It can be a policy, it can be a law, it can be governance, it can be regulations, it can be requirements, it can be standards, depending on the industry that you're working in. And from time to time, we are seeing this is growing exponentially, not just in a linear fashion, but then in an exponential fashion. And the compliance is nothing but it's an ability to act according to a set of rules so that we don't end up into trouble. And this is changing over time. and not just with the rules and regulations, but also with respect to fines and penalties. So in here, we also see the regulations are changing day by day over the time, and they're really getting very stringent. And from the slide, I also mentioned a couple of them, just an glimpse of few of them. For example, if you're working in health industry, it's HIPAA. If you're working in payment cards, it's PCA DSS. And irrespective of your industry, if you have any kind of personal data, then GDPR is applicable. And let me also quickly tell you, for example, the Marriott Hotel, I am not sure how many of you are quite familiar with this particular use case. The Marriott Hotel has undergone a huge data breach, and they have also paid, I think, close to 99 million pounds of fine as an penalty because they couldn't comply to this GDPR, because of which all the details of all of the customers has been leaked. And if we look into the reason here, the reason is they have acquired a set of hotels, and then the acquisition happened in 2016, and that's nothing but a Starwood hotels they have bought in. And when during integration, they haven't really looked into what all the security, breach or what are the security stature of that particular acquisition they have done, because of which they ended up getting into the trouble and then they paid fine. Not only just this, I can quote so many examples. There was a private practitioner based out of London, and this guy, he's doing his private practice as a dentist. We all know if we have to undergo dental procedure outside India, it is really, really expensive. So far, he is doing so good. But one day, what happened? His entire system is being compromised. And as per the rules, you have to pay 2% of your overall revenue, or I think 20 million, or 40 million, something is like 2% is the lowest level, 4% is the lowest level of overall revenue. And this particular dentition, he doesn't have any other go. He has to shut down his entire practice because he can't afford to pay the fine. So what I'm trying to say is the importance of all of these regulations, rules, or laws, or whatever it is. It ensures, there is a tight regulation, there is a tight restriction of the data that is flowing around. At the same time, if businesses are not adhering, they just can disappear, like what happened with this particular dentist in UK. And now, what is the approach for this? Now, it's not about trying to get panicky, but yes, we have best practices in place. And then what we have to do is we have to establish risk-based controls to protect integrity, confidentiality, and accessibility of the data. And having said that, what we have to do is shift left is the new paradigm, I have to say. Instead of finishing everything, developing everything, integrating and pushing it to the build, we have to come towards the left-hand side, and then we have to aim towards building or integrating these compliances, whatever rules, whatever regulations we have as part of the design. Yeah, and then how is it about? How does that look like? So let me just take you step by step. Compliance by design and default. So first of all, whenever there is a new regulation, for example, be it in GDPR, or if you're working in the hospital industry, or if your software is pertaining to payment card industry, sit and thoroughly go through all the requirements, all the regulations. Sometimes with my experience with GDPR, normally what happens whenever there is a law document, we all know, for example, most of you who are attending here are all techies, yeah? And till date, we can never understand a document written by a lawyer, be it a registration document, be it your car loan, at least I don't understand. So first of all, these requirements has to be converted into an clear, fine, granular stuff so that the techies can understand it. And then you also have to come up with a procedure in order to do the gap assessments and how do we integrate into the existing system that you're working on. So what we have to do is we have to thoroughly sit, review all the regulations and frameworks. And then the next step is, as the best process or the best methodology, each and every company is already having their own process of doing a threat model. And then the next step is integrate all of these and enhance your threat modeling. Not necessarily you have to integrate entirety of it. For example, say like you are doing a threat modeling. Have one particular chapter for GDPR and check. It's a quick check in case if there is any personal data that is being implemented or that is being part of this particular piece of functionality or a product that your company is delivering to. If that is the case, then you can also recommend people to go for an intensive risk assessments or privacy assessments in the next step. So once we perform the risk assessments, what happens? We definitely identify the gaps. And it's not just only identifying the gaps. We will also try to identify the gaps in the existing controls, mapping each and every one of these requirements. And the first most important thing to make any process or a technology successful is people. People are the biggest key. And here what we have to do is people whoever were involved doing the risk assessment, we have to get a strong agreement from them. In my case, what I always do is I just don't focus on the development teams. I ensure even my operations team is also coming and participating in this brainstorming of risk assessment or threat modeling, whatever we call. And we collectively come up with action items and the gaps we identify, because it's more important to get people working together. Otherwise, what happens, for example, whenever you go to any kind of audit requirements, or as in the audit world, what happens if you just can't say like I'm doing a vulnerability management, I am doing a code scanning. They always wanted to see the evidences. Or, for example, when there is a ticket that is open during the audit, if it is a high ticket, then they will also definitely question depending on the priority, depending on the CV rating of that. Then it should not happen like development team versus the operations team pointing at each other and trying to blame each other. First of all, you have to have people working together as one team. That's most important. That's the key for getting success to the process or the methodology that we are doing on. And then we also have to list the security tools that we are using. And then most of the security tools also gives you the flexibility to add some rules, because you know what your business is all about, what your technology is all about, what your stack is all about, and what is the feature that you're planning to deliver. So that's the most important thing, is you just have to sit and enhance and add the rules into the list of the security tools you have. And the biggest mantra for now, the current trend is you just have to automate and automate. Integrate all of these into your CI/CD pipelines, and then ensure you have everything from right from development to the to your production. Everything is going seamlessly so well. Yeah, this is the key. This is how we can integrate it. And now, most of the time, for example, whenever this GDPR or China cybersecurity law has come into picture, everybody started thinking, oh my God, what is this? This is going to be a huge burden, or this is going to be a huge roadblock for us to perform business. Or even, for example, whenever a country or a particular territory comes up with a data sovereignty telling you have to, have your data inside the boundaries itself, all the companies think it is a burden. Yes, to some extent it is a burden, but for sure, this is also a business enabler, because it also contributes to strategic governance for the entire overall organization. With this, who is working what, because you have a framework in place, you have enabled everything in place. And then it also improves the overall operations, because when something is going wrong, since you have put everything in place, since all the teams are quite very well integrated and working on one goal of ensuring security is integrated at each and every phase, the compliance requirements and all of them, then it really improves the overall operations. And then it also makes your organization more competitive. Because let me tell you this example. Most of the companies are on cloud, and most of you today who are also joining my session are also definitely working in the cloud atmosphere. In the cloud, much before the customer asks, when you say like, I have an SOC certified, I am an ISO certified. For example, if you're working in payment card industry or HIPAA or whatever, if you say, I already have the certification, it gives a lot of confidence for our customers about, look, they already have it. And then this really makes you definitely an outstanding one in the market. And then once you do this, once you have everything in place, once you put everything in place in the beginning of the development, it's like you're not trying to discover something towards the mid of the development, like you have to take a U-turn with respect to your architecture, or you have to take a U-turn adding a new tool into the pipeline or whatever. Since you have everything in place right from the beginning, right from the design, you can really turn on more features and functionality. What else your team needs. When you put everything in place, you're definitely saving a lot of time and resources, since you have planned everything so well. And the more features and functionality you'll be able to deliver, it's easy for your product or an organization to become the market leader. And for sure, last but not the least, it also saves a lot of money and making more money to organizations. In my previous examples I've mentioned like how people are losing money, how companies are losing money because of non-compliance reasons. And then when we do everything right, we are saving money, and also we are making money by adding more features and functionality, so that we have lot more customers coming into the pipeline and trying to buy our products or features. Yeah. And these are some of the use cases that we can talk about. I think most of us know regarding the Equifax data breach. It happened during 2017 and it made a lot of news. So this is the statistics of how many millions of records have been compromised and how much of data is lost. And it made really a lot of noise in the market, in the security market. And the breach cost $300 million. And the first hit was the company's stock was hit very badly, very, very badly. And the reason being because there was an open source software, Apache Struts, because of which this entire thing happened. And for example, when we are doing this, security compliance by design and by default, when you don't have a question in your threat modeling, in your risk assessment, asking your team on upfront, telling like, hey, look, are you using any, open sources? I think this is going to be a joke for most of the people because without open sources, we cannot do any kind of developments. Now, open sources become part and parcel of development these days. Yes, when you have an open source, you have to have proper tools in place and also integrate them in the right place in the right time. And you also have to have an integration with the databases that are available in the market, and it has to be automated. Automation is the mantra in this world. So when you automate, ideally what should happen is, for example, you're using open source 1, the version 2. And in case if there is a vulnerability that is being reported on that particular open source, the idea is ideally the team should be getting an message, or workflow has to be triggered and they have to be intimated telling, look, this particular open source version, this is being compromised, and then you have to immediately patch it with the latest one, and you have to do regression testing, and then you have to release your build, and then you have to redo everything. And the next one is these days, normally there is a saying telling like network is for the hack and cloud is for the leak. But I don't think so, because since we all are from the security community, we are putting a lot of efforts in place, and there are also a lot of compliances in place to ensure this is really false. And most of the times what happens in the cloud, we just take the data in the backup, and then we just forget like there is some data that is lying in the backup, and then the customer leaves, and then so we just forget it. Just imagine if this particular backup, which is lying somewhere, which you also forgot because you haven't done the deprovision, and you have not even heard of deprovisioning. Say, for example, this team is really new and they're working on it for the very first time, and then they haven't really thought of deprovisioning. But then when the customer started asking, like, yes, they started collecting all the data that is in the database tables and different file systems and all, and they dumped it and gave. But how about we having this as one of the questionnaire in your risk assessment, talking about what kind of, are you having plans in place to have data deprovisioning? Because this is also important as per the privacy laws. Once they leave your cloud system, you also have to clean all your tenant, and sometimes you also have to give the data back to them. So in this example, if the backup contains finance data and if it gets compromised, it not just impacts our current customers, but it also impacts our potential customers. So it is really, really important for us, like how you're integrating your open source vulnerabilities, all your data backups, data deprovisioning, all of this have to be thought towards the design phase so that we don't miss out on all of these. And then humans are tend to doing mistakes, and then when you forget about this backup, and then when it compromises, it creates a lot of blockers, and then it kind of pauses your business for a while. And then, so quick summary about this entire topic. So the main important key thing is we have to shift left, assuring security in the development phase, early in the development phase, and design security in each and every layer. And foremost important thing is get people working together. It's not about you, development team versus operations team. It's about one team. We are working as a one team. And then one most important thing is in this process of automation, as much as you could do, at least in my organization, I can say like we have a visual. For example, I just integrate all of these tools in the pipelines. And then when I open that particular tool, I can see everything in a pictorial representation. For example, how much of it is coming from 45, how much of it is coming from villas, white source, black duck, you name any check marks or whatever tools are being integrated into the pipeline, everything I can see it visually. Because visual representation makes it more clear, more easier. And for sure, you also have to design your system for failures so that you also know how to cope up and how strong, resilient you are. And foremost important thing is you have to have clear communication, and you have to have continuous awareness trainings and information flow has to be there throughout the cycle, so that because there should be a continuous dialogue happening between each and every stakeholder to ensure everything is happening. And then with this, we can proudly say, we can achieve security compliance by design and by default. Yep. So in case if you have any questions, feel free to put your questions here. So thank you all for joining my session. Have a good day.